So I'm Dan Woods, CEO of Socotra. We'll get to that later, but first I want to introduce my co-presenter, Kylie Gauthier, and she's with Jetty. Is it working? Oh, fantastic. Yes, she runs financial products at Jetty, and I'd love to ask her to tell you some more about that.
Awesome. Thanks, Dan. Happy to be here. So I'll definitely talk a little bit about Jetty over the next couple of slides, our business, our products, the problem we're trying to solve. To start, my background is in insurance. I lead financial products for Jetty. We sell insurance products. We also sell consumer lending products. My teams manage both of those verticals. On the insurance side, that entails traditional insurance product development, portfolio management, compliance, actuarial, and have spent some time with a bunch of people here and around the conference at some of the carriers prior to joining Jetty 4 years ago. So a little bit about the company and the mission that we're trying to solve. Really, we are trying to transform the way America rents. We realized through a couple of experiences that the renting process is really inefficient, really unoptimal for both renters and property managers. And so we're trying to deliver products that can improve both sides of that experience across both ends of the lease agreement. The origin story was experienced by our co-founder when he was attempting to move back to the States after living and working abroad for a few years. And he couldn't get access to an apartment unit in the city and was really confused by this. He was being declined apartment after apartment because he didn't have the credit history, the income from a US job that fit this very archaic and regimented set of screening criteria that property managers were using to assess renter risk. And the whole time he's sitting there thinking, this doesn't make sense. I am employed, I'm a young professional, I have a steady income, and yet they think that I can't afford this apartment when I, in reality, can. And so that was really the genesis of a series of hypotheses around there being a piece of renting that was broken, particularly around risk assessment on the renter side. So we set out to determine how pervasive is this problem and really what kind of product can plug this hole. We had a theory that there's both the renter piece of just getting them access to units, but there's also this piece for properties who are trying their best to understand who's a risky renter, who's not a risky renter, get them in the unit, keep them in the unit, and improve their NOI. So we started to do a little research. Realized that this was not a singular problem. There were a lot of people in positions similar to our founder, particularly credit invisible, thin credit, no credit, who were just being underserved by this market. But over and above that population, there were other more pervasive issues with renter affordability that were really lending themselves to this growing crisis in housing accessibility. If you look at the averages around how much people actually put towards rent, it's really staggering. 40% is around the current average. When people are putting almost a whole paycheck towards their rent, it really creates a burden for them in other areas of their life. In addition to that, most renters are living paycheck to paycheck and definitely don't have a significant amount of savings stashed away, which can create a huge barrier of entry to being able to post cash when you're moving into a unit. If you think back to like how you engage with leasing teams, a lot of times they ask for a first month's rent, a security deposit, maybe even sometimes last month's rent. And for individuals who don't have this cash liquid at that move-in moment, it actually might mean that they can't get housing. And so we started to get a better, clearer sense of this set of problems and identify how we were uniquely poised to begin to solve them. Over the past couple of years, as we've been running at those products, things have also gotten worse from a macroeconomic perspective. We've talked a ton this week about a lot of these impacts hitting every line of business, things like inflation. These have particularly hit the rental market as well and have contributed to growing income inequality that further burdens this particular population. And then over and above the affordability piece, there's this other layer of leasing practices that sits on top of it that makes it worse, right? These properties don't have risk teams. They're doing their best to try and understand who is risky, who is not. In a lot of cases, they're working with outdated screening practices and tools and really just don't have the expertise to make smart decisions about renter risk. And so that's really where our product ideas started to generate from. Once we had a view of how we could help, the next step was really, where do we start? How do we get access to these renters and begin to actually put something in market? So we started by developing an exclusive network of property partnerships. These are some of the largest, most sophisticated, most well-respected property managers, owner-operators in the industry. A lot of these people are actually in Vegas this week for another conference about real estate tech. So we've gotten to engage with them here, which has been great. They have tens of thousands of apartment units across the country. So they're dealing with broad swaths of renter demographics, with tons of renters that they're managing at scale. So this means they have huge teams that they have to actually manage from a workflow perspective, tons of training, lots of turnover, and it becomes really difficult for them to manage some of their tooling. They do have tons of sophisticated tech in areas of their operation. So if you think about how you actually pay your rent, how you're managed within really what is their CRM, their property management systems, they have strong tech to support their core workflows. But the renter risk assessment piece had been historically underserved and hadn't had a lot of attention put on it. And so really that's where we started to drill in. And we quickly realized that by partnering in this B2B2C motion, we could glean a lot of advantages using their expertise and their knowledge and data to our advantage. So we are actually fully integrated with their property management systems, which enables us to embed our products within their native technology. That in turn enables us to be really smart about how we market to residents, when we market to residents, making sure that we can get our products in front of them the minute that they're approved for a lease, the minute that they need them. We can use that data to better underwrite them, to see their rent payment history, to service their products once they actually become a Jetty customer, and so on and so on. And so this B2B2C embedded model has been really, really helpful for us to build out a stable, scalable, profitable product suite. So now we have the idea, the products, the partnerships, we understand the tech. What are the products that we bring to market first to start chipping away at these problems? We started on the insurance side. So Jetty is an MGA. Our first products that we developed were insurance products. Jetty Deposit and Jetty Protect are our core ones. We'll talk a lot about those in a couple slides. We also have non-insurance products. The ones on the slide are actually consumer lending products. Jetty Rent is a flexible rent payment service where residents can actually finance their rent and pay in installments over the course of a month. Jetty Credit is a service that reports positive rent payment history to the credit bureaus. So really that was built with the intent to help renters boost their credit, better their financial position by reporting what is most often their largest monthly expense to the credit bureaus, particularly for people who may not have an automobile, definitely don't have a mortgage. They have really limited tools to improve their credit, and then that continues to be a burden for them in gaining access to capital, traditional forms of credit, or ideally at some point a home. But we're going to focus on Jetty Deposit and Jetty Protect and how we've partnered with Socotra to really bring those solutions to the next stage of maturity. In addition to those, we have a lot of other products on the roadmap. We started with the move-in moment. That was the clearest opportunity for us to get access to renters and to capture them with their first interaction with the property so that they become a Jetty customer right away. But our intent is really to build this suite of financial products that covers the entirety of the renting life cycle. So at move-in, yes, but also while they're renting and ultimately at point of move-out. So, from a product perspective, let's talk about Jetty Protect and Jetty Deposit. I'll start with Jetty Protect because it's really straightforward. It's just a traditional renter's insurance product. The value to the consumer with this product is really obvious, right? Protect their contents, give them property and liability coverage, very standard, something that's very familiar to them. They understand it when they see it, and hopefully we can deliver a product that just gives them a really great experience and something that they can understand. There is also a huge benefit to the properties by having their residents have access to a comprehensive HO4 product. That part is sometimes less intuitive. In almost every case in our partners, presenting proof of coverage from a renter's insurance perspective is a requirement of signing the lease. And the properties do that because they want to make sure that they have liability coverage in the event that the renter causes a loss to the property. And so that is a core piece of the way the properties manage their own risk. And so to the extent Jetty can play a role in helping provide a good experience to both of those parties, it's a win-win. It's a very traditional product. We need capabilities in the company to be able to support a very traditional insurance product. And so we have teams and tools to be able to do that in probably a lot of the ways that a lot of companies here do. Jetty Deposit, on the other hand, is definitely a different beast. This is an insurance product. It's a surety bond. So it definitely doesn't look like a typical policy. The intent with Jetty Deposit is to give the renter an alternative to a cash deposit the minute they move in. Cash deposits are a huge risk management tool for properties. If you think about what it actually achieves, a lot of people first associate security deposits as protection for damages, right? So a renter moves out, they took something off the wall, they didn't spackle the hole, the property is left to actually go in and pay somebody to fix all of those things up, and they take some amount out of the deposit to cover those costs. That is all true, but the actual value of a security deposit to the partner is to cover any unpaid rent. The vast, vast majority of dollars withheld from security deposits in cash are coming from either lease abandonments, evictions, or people skipping out on rent. In a lot of cases, it's their last month of rent, right? They're like, okay, I'm moving on. I can get out of here without posting this rent. I'll be all good. And so the properties think a lot about how to manage this deposit strategy to make sure that they're reducing their bad debt, but it also does create a lot of friction at move-in. It requires a big cash outlay. They have to do some sort of assessment on what should I charge this renter. In most cases, it's a multiple of rent. So it'll be maybe 1 month's rent for a conditionally approved applicant who might have less than stellar credit. Maybe it's 2 times, maybe 3 or higher, depending on the state and how they restrict what properties can and can't charge. And so that can actually mean that implementing a cash deposit strategy that's not optimal can impact your leasing and your occupancy, which is also bad for them. And so they're looking for solutions to basically lower the barrier of entry for renters to get in, but maintain that same protection. And that's exactly what Jetty Deposit is meant to do. So instead of posting a cash deposit, the renter will see a quote from Jetty. It's a non-refundable premium that they can pay to effectively insure their obligations under the terms of the lease agreement. So once they're a Jetty bondholder, they operate as normal, pay their rent, live in the unit, but at the end of the lease, if they have a balance, the property attempts to collect that balance from the resident first. If they're unable to, they then can come to Jetty and file a claim. And so the property has the same protection, but hopefully made it easier for that renter to come in. There's a couple of reasons why this product is very non-traditional, like not the least of which is because it's a surety bond and it's actually sold to an individual. That in itself creates some complexity and nuances in actually managing it to profitability, managing the actual consumer experience associated with that product, and actually building tech solutions to support just pure policy administration. It almost is like a hybrid of a commercial product and a personal lines product. The tenant is the principal. They're the ones paying the premium. We are underwriting them at point of sale. But there are a significant number of things that impact the loss potential on a surety bond that are actually in the hands of the property. If you think about the property, like they can influence whether or not there's a claim to a pretty good degree, depending on how strong their rent collection tactics are, what their tech stack looks like, how well-trained their leasing teams are, how stable their leasing teams are. And so we're actually underwriting both parties in this, understanding that Jetty is going to be on the hook at the end of the day, depending on the risk of both of those components. And so that introduces a fair amount of complexity in underwriting and pricing change management. And really, one of the strong capabilities that we need to build and maintain is the ability to iterate on that underwriting model over time. It also is a long-tailed product, which is really challenging in that dimension as well. If you think about the actual like move-in, move-out cycle, they purchase it at move-in, but it is actually an indefinite term policy that follows the life of the lease. So it's active until their move-out date or until their eviction date or the later of either of those two. So we don't actually know how long the policy will be in effect when we bind it. And that creates a significant amount of challenges from an administration standpoint and from making sure that we're pricing accurately on day one. So that brings us to the tech. I mentioned that we're an MGA at the onset. We partner with State National and Farmers to bring our products to market. They're awesome partners. That being said, we own almost every component of the policy lifecycle, which is kind of unique. Obviously, we own those integrations with the properties. We own all of that tech. We own the application experience. When a resident arrives at a Jetty environment through their property management system, that is ours. We own the quote, the bind, the policy admin system, all of the servicing. When a customer calls in to change their address or their name or their payment method, they reach a Jetty service operations associate. We have an in-house claims team. We manage all claims in-house and really manage the entire renter experience across every interaction with our product. So probably like a lot of companies here, particularly those in this room, we were faced as we're growing and scaling with a set of questions and decisions to make around how we best set ourselves up for success with supporting our products for the long term with technology. The obvious are definitely there, right? Like we want a way to guarantee system stability, and we want to be able to make sure that it can support the nuances of our product. But we also have all of these other components of how the program works for our residents and our partners that it needs to play well with. So it needs to be able to support our PMS integrations. It needs to work nicely with our claim system. And every touch point that the resident has with us that is facilitated by these systems has to be on brand, really seamless, and really strong from a B2B2C perspective. So one of the critical pieces that we had to assess to be able to provide this was the policy admin system, and really that's where Socotra comes in. We went through a very long sort of set of discovery sessions around what is most important to us, what do we know now about our products that we think are gonna be really important to have to manage over the next 5, 10, 15 years, and how do we prioritize what we're looking for in a technology partner. This is actually a slide pulled directly from the deck that our product team pitched to our leadership team when we were making this decision. So it is very legitimately the framework that we went through to think through these pieces. The first that was probably the most critical was that it could support the surety product. We knew that there were intricacies and idiosyncrasies of how this product works that we needed a creative solution for, and probably a solution that was fairly custom because we wanted to treat it like it was an indefinite term policy, but we also needed to make sure that we could continue to do things like bill the policyholder every month for the duration of their tenancy without knowing when that's gonna end. So we needed to support that non-traditional structure. We also needed to support a very traditional structure from a renter's insurance perspective with all the usual bells and whistles, everything from issuing compliant notices to documents to a more robust, complicated class plan. And wanted a system that had experience supporting those kinds of products that could help us do it quickly. Doc management. We historically had owned all of the document service internal to Jetty, and we wanted to maintain that, so wanted a system that could support us in that and keep things consistent. Rating, pricing, and decisioning was a really big one, particularly for me and my teams. We know that we have and plan to do a significant amount of underwriting iteration over the next couple of years, and really wanted a way to pull that control into the hands of my team, my actuaries, my product developers, and not have a really heavy reliance on our product and engineering teams. On the flip side, they also wanted the same things. We have tons of other tech needs outside of the PAS that we can then deploy those resources to in a much more efficient way. Data, hugely critical for us. We had a mature product offering in the market already. We already had a really robust analytics infrastructure, reporting infrastructure, both to internal stakeholders, properties, external stakeholders, but also because we're an MGA to our financial partners. So we needed a system that would be able to really easily plug and play with our existing bordereau, session statement, reporting, tooling, and capabilities that we could really just use right away. And so that was a big piece. Billing was another one. We had been using Stripe to service our insurance products up until this point. Because we also have non-insurance products that we bill customers for, billing and that experience is actually a very fundamental component of our resident experience. And so we wanted to maintain some consistency there and be able to do creative things with how we're actually billing customers for lots of cross-sold products, some of which that are not insurance. At the time we were talking to Socotra, they didn't actually even have a Stripe integration, but had committed to delivering one to us by the time that we needed it. And so that made our decision incredibly easy. And then an admin portal. As I mentioned, we own all of the service operations. And so we needed a place for our agents to be able to make changes and actually engage with customers in the same ways that they were already doing. On top of that, I mentioned we own claims. We were already on Snapsheet. And so the fact that Socotra really works well and integrates with Snapsheet was a huge plus. Not only because it's easy, but it actually has a ton of potential to make our teams work way more efficiently, help Jetty grow its operations team in smart ways and start using those resources for other value add pieces. And generally just fit really well within the rest of our tech stack and felt like the right move forward for us. And so with that, I'll hand it to Dan.
Thank you. All right. And we'll definitely bring her back. Isn't she great? Jetty's doing some really, really amazing things and just some non-standard things that made it really interesting for us. Now, the answer is not just simply, oh, just choose this vendor and everything's going to be great. The answer for enterprise IT is it's a different paradigm, not just a different product. And if I were to epitomize the paradigm with one thing, it's that in the end, best of breed wins. If that sounds scary to you because you best of breed, you might associate with vendors pointing fingers at each other when things don't work, upgrade dependency, log jams, things like that. If you don't believe in best of breed, but you've got one of these in your pockets, you've got something to think about. This is a monument to best of breed. So why is it that this works and best of breed hasn't worked in the industry? And it's because we've been buying components that aren't best of breed ready. For something to be best of breed ready, it needs to have three things. It needs to be truly off the shelf, open APIs, and true cloud. That sounds pretty technical. These are buzzwords you've been hearing a lot, but I don't know they've been well defined, so I'm going to break it down really simply. True cloud is when the vendor doesn't schedule the upgrades with you. Gmail has never scheduled an upgrade with me. What version of LinkedIn are you running?
Who knows?
No one knows but LinkedIn engineers. They probably don't know. But the point is that's cloud. Cloud is not installing legacy on a rented server run by Amazon. API-driven is when any engineer can just go right to the website and read exactly how the software works, just like a real grown-up, mature piece of software. Literally, our competitors know as much about our product as our customers do, as it would be like with Salesforce. They don't make you sign an NDA, and it's not a secret thing. Just go to Salesforce website, read how it works. And then off the shelf, you hear that term a lot too. When a product is really off the shelf, you can get a full version, certainly in under 24 hours. I could send a text message right now, and someone could have a login in their inbox within 5 minutes. That gives them access to all the power that any of our customers have. That's off the shelf. Off the shelf is, you want a license? Here you go. You want a tenant? Here you go. And you can imagine when you put this together, the kind of business benefits that it leads to. Speed, risk reduction, things like that. And we're the policy administration piece of it, and I'll get to later how we help out with some of the other things. We don't just give you the policy admin and say, good luck. We'll get to that. But we do have to be the only policy administration system that supports the IT paradigm of the frankly, I'd say of the future. It's of the present age. You take 2 steps outside the door from the insurance industry, and this is just the way stuff works. And it's coming in. And it's benefiting us, those who use it. And what does it provide? These are the 4 things you need to see in a modern enterprise. You need modularity. You need to be able to select your components. You want to switch your payment processor. You want to switch your admin system. You want to switch your claims system. You should be able to do that. When you monoliths are inherently frozen in time because it's like, I'm an old computer nerd. And I remember when I built my own PCs, and I can update the video card, I can change the processor, the audio card, all those sorts of things one by one because it's modular. If my Mac breaks, there's only one move. Here, give me another one. It's great for computers, not so great for your systems because it's impossible to future-proof it and to keep it moving and keep it modern. You just buy it, it has a vintage, it's new. Well, it's new when you start deploying it. 6 years later when you finish, it's not new anymore. And then it never gets any newer. Things need to be able to connect to other things. That's self-evident. You need the workflow agility. I'm a big fan of composable enterprise. Google that. It's a whole phrase of describing a lot of things I've been getting into here. And I believe that UIs, where the workflows happen, should be composable and disposable. If the back end, if your infrastructure is built well, building a UI it's the tip of the iceberg, and probably proportionally so. What's the tip of an iceberg? 10%? It's less than 10% of the effort on the front end compared to all that goes on in the back end. And then you can customize as long as you contain it to that front end. And then engineer fungibility. With that, all that means is you're not using arcane languages and highly proprietary things. And also when your systems are modular, you don't need to keep knowledge of the system in some massive oral tradition that takes 20 years to learn. You can learn your component. This is just how modern software works, as I was saying. You need the ability to use the engineer of your choice, to train them up quickly, to use the system integrator of your choice, to switch them out, things like that, or you're going to be trapped. Anyway, moving on. So what do we actually do? The heart of what we sell is the connected core. This is the policy admin system. This is the data representation of the policy. That's at the heart. And we've created frankly, we've created the first off-the-shelf policy admin system. We've got customers in 7 countries doing life and P&C, all on the exact same core. That sounds kind of crazy to people who've been around insurance for a while, but consider this. How many versions of Salesforce are there? You might use it to sell insurance. We might use it to sell enterprise software. Someone else might use it to sell real estate, consulting hours, whatever else. It's the same Salesforce. And we've got people using Socotra for quite a variety of products on the exact same core, using the exact same principles that Salesforce would use. And in Jetty's case, they're using it for renters and renters and surety right there. So what comes next? Before that, I should apply this. There were some interesting use cases where the flexibility was especially needed. I'm wondering if you could speak to some of those and why these were difficult previously.
For sure. So I'm actually going to start with the indefinite policy terms. I kind of alluded to this earlier. The other two are inherently challenges that come along with that being a core piece of the product. As I mentioned, it's purchased at move-in, but it doesn't expire or end until the lease is over, and that date is constantly in flux. And so we needed a solution that could provide the actual capability and administration of that product from a billing perspective, a pricing perspective, a documentation, whether it's policy documents or notices or payment reminders, and all of those core elements to actually keeping a policy live, but didn't have some of the rigid, very traditional components of a standard 12-month policy rail that has a renewal moment. The customer for Jetty doesn't understand that there's a renewal, it's just the policy is still live. And so that was an interesting complexity that we had to navigate and figure out how to support. The next one, which is really unique and a real challenge for us, both from a technical perspective, but also a profitability perspective, is that the policy is not cancelable for non-payment of premium. We have 2 billing plans that the customer can choose from. One is just a pay upfront model where they pay 1 premium at purchase, coverage is live for the duration of tenancy. That one is super simple, easy, clean. But the value prop that Jetty is trying to drive to that renter is lowering their move-in costs. And so to the extent that that upfront premium is still a decently high number because they are required to post $6,000 in coverage, it starts to eat away at that value proposition. And so one of our important offerings is a monthly payment plan for residents to kind of own up to that piece of the product and continue to help them lower that cash outlay needed by spreading it into installments over some period of time. At the same time, the value prop to the property is that they have guaranteed coverage. If we were able to cancel those policies for non-pay, the product value prop would significantly erode and they would just use cash instead because that's the tried and true model. So we needed to figure out a way to support that, both from a technical perspective. We shouldn't be canceling these policies when they're in a grace period. We need to be accruing balances and have a very solid understanding at any given time how much the renter owes in unpaid premium, because we then need to take that and manage it as a business towards profitability. So how are we thinking about drip campaigns, emails, SMS, about balance updates, and being really, really technical about how we're getting customers to cure. At the end of the day, if we're not capturing premium, that's a bad situation for everybody, especially our financial partners. And so that is a very core risk component of the product that we're trying to iterate and solve for every day, and having a system that could give us those triggers, help identify balances really easily, integrate with our other systems where we're triggering these notices, these comms, was a really big priority. And then I kind of touched on the price updates one a little bit, but to dig a little deeper, because we're constantly underwriting partners and residents, and we're onboarding new partners, they're buying new properties, we're reassessing their risk, using their experience pretty consistently, we needed a way to really have an efficient, fast change management process associated with pricing and decisioning. Both from, as I mentioned, that actuarial versus product and engineering resourcing constraint, but also just building it into our management of our partners so that we can react to them making changes to the way that they manage their leases and their renting workflows that should benefit Jetty, and we give them price adjustments and credit for implementing those practices. And so finding a tool that could really put that power in the hands of Jetty to be able to keep up with how we're managing the portfolio is a big one.
Great, thank you. And it's great doing those things, and emphasize, I don't think there was a product change. That was handled with the existing product that's already used by dozens of other Socotra customers. And even if there was something in there, and I don't think there was, that required a change, like a grown-up software company, it's a feature request. And if we implement a feature request, it goes into the product, it's documented for all customers and publicly available, and that's what allows them to continue to operate without customization so that they can continue to get continuous upgrades and so forth. But I love hearing these stories of the unique things that insurers, and I also just love the story of what they're providing to people who have difficult times getting the kind of liquidity and such to get rental and to get rentals, particularly because they often are at the more vulnerable end of society. And I love that we're able to meet those needs when we hear. It's kind of like, okay, hit me with it. What's your unique thing that we haven't seen before? Try us. So what came next? Well, 1 year ago at ITC, I was on one of these stages talking about the app marketplace, where perhaps inspired by our epitome of best of breed, we created the first true app marketplace for the insurance industry, where we can connect with any of these. We got 5 Sigma here, and what's that, TransPay, several others. I think we were up to 16 now. And you can literally connect them as easily as installing an app on your smartphone. Select it, answer a couple questions of where you provide your login just like you do if you're installing an Uber app, things like that, and you're off, you're connected. And what does this provide? If you want to do an integration between A and B, having open APIs is a massive step forward. You don't even know how to connect the things if you don't have that. But even then, there's so much more that we could do to provide. And this is actually the heart of the app marketplace. The heart of the app marketplace is not just that we have a bunch of integrations available out of the box, although we do, and it is valuable. The biggest value is if you choose to, you can create your own app, or a system integrator can create an app, a third party. And you can create only the part that you need to connect A to B. You don't have to worry about hardware provisioning. You don't need to have an AWS account. You upload a container that's got the app and say, I want to deploy it. Socotra App Marketplace handles that. And of course, the actual deployment, handle configuration management, secure storage of credentials, logging, monitoring, and really cool hot upgrades. So when you want to upgrade your integration code, you can literally do it while the system is in production. It just keeps going. And then, of course, there are all the business benefits, continues to upgrade, no prescribed language, so like anyone can develop against it, as long as you're using our APIs and so forth. Anyway, so how does this apply to Jetty? Let's get back to the real world. We're here for insurance. Jetty's using 8 apps. We had one Snapsheet that was already available. Stripe was not available, and we created it, shipped it on time, which is fantastic. The 5 there, middle and right, have no logos because these were made by Jetty or by Jetty partners to provide additional functionality. If there's something that they wanted, there's an app for that. They could create an app for that. How cool is that? And then I think the coherent no-code external rater is an interesting one. What was the need there? We do have a rater, but you chose to create a rater app to do your own.
Yeah, we did. Our company is small, our team is fairly small, and so we have a handful of people with all of the pricing experience, knowledge, and capabilities that sit within Jetty. And we wanted to give them a tool that was familiar, that was not something they had to onboard onto in complex ways, that they could just pick up. Coherent, we leverage through an Excel workbook, so like extremely familiar to my entire team, where they're doing their own, test rating in Excel anyway. We may as well let them have the reins on the production rater to make sure that they feel great about it. They have the tools to be able to change it when the business sees the need for a change, and something that they could pick up pretty immediately and let the engineers focus on building these net new custom apps.
Right, fantastic. And it works as you'd expect. Install an app and use it. It's so amazing how this kind of operation is every day for us in the outside world, and in insurance, the idea of connecting another rater is a nightmare project, let alone replacing a core, which is one of the scariest things to many insurers, and to us, one of the most routine things. So next was Core Plus. This is the big thing we did this year. Last year, we were here talking about the app marketplace. But what comes next after the app marketplace? The dream would be that someone could come to us and say, I'm doing workers' comp. And we could say, no problem. Here's a product out of the product library, and here's 2 data providers you need. Let's install the apps for those. Oh, which claims do you want? We've got, choose between A or B. You want B? It's like saying, okay, do you want Uber or Lyft? Okay, install. And just doing that, setting that up, and in one workshop to set that up for the customer, that's the dream. To provide that for every product line on that list, that's going to take us a little while, and probably going to be 1,000 apps. So what comes next? What came next is we thought about the 2 lines of business that people most use Socotra for, and it's auto and homeowners. And we thought, okay, we're not going to have that for every line of business. But what if we just choose 2, and we curate so that we've got the right data providers, the right payment, the right front ends, distribution management, claims, and all of those in one package? And that's Core Plus. And Core Plus, it's the first offering in insurance IT that is both end-to-end and off-the-shelf. Legacy has been end-to-end since the beginning of time. It sure isn't off-the-shelf. We've been off-the-shelf since the beginning, and a lot of insurtechs have been. But Core Plus is the first time that someone's assembled all the off-the-shelf components into a complete end-to-end solution that has all the workflows you need, has all the things I was talking about, cloud APIs and all of those, and it's already built with all these components and more available. So, as I mentioned, auto, homeowners, and but what this meant for Jetty? Well, they're not doing auto and they're not doing homeowners. So what they had is renters and surety. So in the case of renters, starting on the right, well, renters is pretty close to homeowners. And the off-the-shelf nature of Core Plus isn't just, here's this thing, good luck. Every single component of it is connected to every other component through openly documented APIs. You can replace any one of them. You can modify the documentation. All the flexibility that we had when it was just a bucket of Legos is still available to you when it comes already assembled. So it didn't take a lot to modify that homeowner's Core Plus product to work for renters. Now, what about surety? That's completely different. We'd never even done surety before. And appreciate the trust they put in us. It was well placed, and I'm so glad you did. But because it's still on top of that flexible core, they're able to just do surety like anything else. They might not have some of the things pre-built to take advantage of it, but as easily as they could have done it before Core Plus, they're able to do it. No tech nerd presentation would be complete without a block diagram. There's a lot of components here. Right in the center there is the core. To the left are the various portals and such that they're using from Core Plus, our integrations, apps, and then reporting, and of course through the app marketplace for things in the future, and the additional apps that they created for themselves. So that leads down to one thing. How do you get started with this? What did they do? Well, because it's completely openly documented, literally anyone with a license can deploy Socotra. So they have a choice. They can do it themselves, or they can work with a partner. And I don't know what you'd like to share about. Oh, spoiler alert! You went with SynPulse as a partner, and I think I saw someone from SynPulse as I was walking in. There he is. I promised him told him he's going to get a shout out. And here it is. But yeah, what can you say about this process and how that worked for you? And I think that's it. We can just go if there's any questions.
Yeah, so we are partnering with SynPulse to help actually implement our products. We arrived at SynPulse from a recommendation from Socotra. We knew we wanted a third party in with us that had an understanding of the core. As easy as it is to understand, we knew that we would want to be able to prioritize our Jetty engineers against very particular product problems that we were trying to solve with the implementation, and knew that we could bring in additional expertise from someone who had seen the system before, could help us with extremely specific tactical implementation questions that we had. Everything from how are we thinking about proration? How do we think about cancellation? How are we thinking about how the system treats each policy? And having a partner in that was able to help us understand exactly how it would work and how it might impact other things elsewhere in the core to make our decision-making process fast and really easy. And then we can spend the hard hours on the much more nuanced, hard Jetty-specific problems that we're trying to solve, and make sure that we're using the system in the best way that we can to ensure that we're set up for success for the long run.